Another question that comes up a lot is when we have boyfriend and girlfriends or partners purchasing a home and they're not legally married, or they don't have a legal, I don't know, what do you call it? Like
A business agreement, for example, between the two of them for how to own the property.
yeah. So I know I've referred you boyfriend and girlfriends that have purchased a home together and you've put together some form of an agreement. How is that beneficial, or why should someone that's buying a home with someone that they're not married to do some form of an agreement?
It's a great question, and it does come up over and over again. I think the biggest reason is, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic couple. This would also go for any business
Like
partner.
brother and sister even.
Yeah, brother and sister, or people in business or whatever. If you're buying property, say as a married couple, for example, there's a whole body of law, family law, community property law that's already geared towards sort of what happens with property that's jointly owned by married folks. But if you're not married, it's more open to negotiation. So I think people maybe assume of how things are going to go, but that's just an assumption. It's not an agreement. So do they want to be tenants in common? Do they want to be joint tenants? Do they know the difference between those things? What happens if one person invested more and the other person invested less? How do they want to deal with the sale of that property? Does one person want to rent? All of those things can be in agreement, but if you have no agreement, then it's all just up in the air.
Well, then also, like, if they break up, like having a predetermined agreement on what would happen if they were to break up, like, are they going to sell the property, or one of them going to buy each other out? Like, what's that pre-agreement? It's almost like a prenup for a boyfriend and girlfriend, or partners, brother and sister, or a business transaction, like someone bought an Airbnb together with someone.
Exactly.
So,
and it's so valuable because, as you know, the market ebbs and flows, right? And you got to catch the market when you want to catch the market. So there is a body of law that if you don't have an agreement and you've got somebody that owns property with you, you could file a partition lawsuit and force a sale. But if you don't actually make a deal on that and go to trial, between filing that lawsuit and getting to trial, at least in Orange County, for example, it's going to take you 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. You had an agreement, you could do that right away and hit the market when you want to hit it.
so it's best to have an agreement of some sort if you're not buying a home with someone you're legally married to,
Exactly.
in most cases.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's talk about seller disclosure disputes. What are the most common disclosure mistakes that lead to lawsuits?
Well, the few that I see, we had a period of time where people literally, when it was a real seller's market, would buy a property without doing an inspection, and they would waive an inspection. And sellers are supposed to disclose known problems, but some of them conveniently neglect to do that, or maybe they don't know. If you get an inspection, first of all, you have to know what you're inspecting and what you're not. So an inspector can only see what's on the surface. If you want to inspect more, you have to do that. But I think the biggest thing is the seller does have a duty to disclose everything the seller knows or should have known. But sometimes they don't know, so you need an inspection. And if you're concerned about something, you still need to do your own research and maybe have some even more inspection. If you think the electrical is terrible, an inspector can't break behind the wall, right? So you have to look into that further in some manner or another.
Well, and it's funny because I'll have sellers that will do their disclosure packet and they'll be like, should I disclose? And I always say, if you ask, should I, that means you should. So that's a good trigger to disclose. The other thing I tell them is, if you don't disclose it, most likely your neighbor's going to disclose it. So if you have a plumber come to your house every 3 months to snake the main line, and the new owner now has a problem with their plumbing, the neighbor's going to go, oh yeah, they usually have a plumber here every 3 months. So if you don't disclose it, someone else is going to disclose it for you, most likely.
And this is why people benefit from having a broker like you with a lot of experience, because somebody with less experience might not say that. And it's better for the seller. It sounds counterintuitive, but the seller is better off to protect himself or herself by disclosing everything so that nobody can sue the seller later and say, hey, you didn't tell me.
Yeah, and that's what I tell my sellers. I'm like, you don't get in trouble for disclosing, you get in trouble for not disclosing. Even if it's something that you think is going to scare a consumer from purchasing the house. Like you said, in a seller's market, nothing was scaring consumers. But at least if you disclosed it, you gave the buyer the opportunity to do their due diligence and decide if they wanted to further, move forward to the transaction, or they could say, hey, you know what, I want to bring in a plumber for this. And then they can either renegotiate, cancel the transaction, they still have options. So love to hear that, because I'm glad I'm telling the clients the right thing.
Yeah.